the back. One thing I did learn in computer school is that the entire system runs on smoke. All those computer chips, they've got smoke in them that makes them work. The
Yep,
proof of this is that when you let the smoke out of them, the computer quits working. So,
indeed.
welcome everybody to the Critical Blast live stream. We are here with Archetype Comics here tonight, and we are going to be talking about The Executioner, which has gone live on Indiegogo. The link to that is in the description below. Please do click on that. Get out there and support this book. We're just starting out with them. I'd love to see something grow from something that I talked about on my live stream without my having to draw a frog. So,
All hail the frog!
all hail the mighty frog. So, guys, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience again here. We'll start with Sethion.
Fair enough. Sethian is my stage name. You can call me Nicholas because that's what you'll know me as on the Indiegogo. I am the owner of Archetype Comics. I am the co-writer and co-creator of the Archetype Comics setting. And this is our first Indiegogo campaign, which we are slowly starting up and getting running. And Joe, do you want to introduce yourself and say hello?
Yes, I am J.E. McKeever. You can call me Joe. I am the other writer and creator of The Executioner in the to-be-named Executionverse, the Archetype Comics universe. And I do all of the creative things while Sethan does all of the unfun businessy things.
Well, I occasionally get to talk to artists, but yes.
Yeah, but you talk to them so that I don't.
That's true. You're scared to them.
Apparently.
Well, you've already said something that's piqued my interest, and that is the Archetype Universe, which tells me that there's bigger plans afoot here than just an Indiegogo launch for a #1 issue.
Yeah, I mean, even at the gate, if you look at the first front page of our Indiegogo, we are listing out 4 stories in one arc that we're going to be covering over the first 4 issues that we have planned, of which we're doing issue #1 at the moment. And beyond that, we want to explore the setting as a whole. We don't see it so much as us putting out a specific character and then following them for 100 comics, but rather us putting out a setting and then following different characters in that setting with different comics, depending on what people are interested in. You know, if they're more interested in following one character, we'll maybe have a line go off that direction, or maybe off onto another one. It's kind of like how in DC, I think Nightwing for a while had his own comic, didn't he? So he's possibly, I wouldn't know. I don't read too many of the mainstream comics at the moment. So
does he still publish since we had the plague?
No. I think they're trying to get back into it, and I heard I've been watching Clownfish TV, and their take on it is pretty accurate so far. It's a colossal mess with Diamond Select and all that.
Yes.
So, yeah. But no, we are trying to follow different characters in our setting. We have speculative ideas in mind for where to go after the first 4 issues. We have plans for more Executioner stuff. We have plans for Gorgon stuff. And then we have plans for just completely other stuff as well that could go ahead that Joe occasionally burbles about. Something about Dr. Octopus in space, I think.
No.
The last one.
No. Dr. Octopus is copywritten. Octodoc.
Octodoc, that's the one.
Octodoc.
Yes, totally not Dr. Octopus.
No, totally not. Octodoc. He's specialized. He's a veterinary specialist.
No, actually, he's a super scientist genius doctor that's an octopus in an environmental suit.
Okay, I find that interesting because I was just telling my son the other day that, and we throw stuff like this at him all the time just to see how he handles it. The therapy bills are going to be fun, but that there are stories out there where scientists theorize that octopi are actually an alien species on Earth, because they have no, in their entire DNA strand, there's nothing that matches up with any other species that says, hey, we're kind of related to this, or we're kind of related to that. Like, we have, 98% of chimpanzee DNA, but the octopus is like, nope, 100% octopus. This is weird shit. So finding one is super intelligent. Yeah, I can buy that. Put him in an environmental suit. Octodoc.
Well, if you're familiar with the biology of octopus, you know that most of their body is made up of nervous tissue and brain matter. They're basically one big floaty brain with no bones. So
Even weirder.
Yeah. So the obvious intimation is that a genius octopus just uses like 90% of his tissue to think.
Yeah, it's like that one time with Tony Stark where it turned out his entire body was brain tissue.
Yeah.
That one.
The thing is that Octodoc is contested by the malevolent Sinister Squid, the Moriarty mollusk, a world-conquering space pirate who is a evil squid.
Yeah. Although we should be careful, Joseph, or else we're going to talk about Sinister Squid all day long, and we're kind of here for our
No,
own
we're here for the executioner. But
I want to talk about Sinister Squid.
But see,
no, you don't.
See that if we can arrange it, if in a far-flung future, if all goes well, we can have the Executioner and Octodoc versus Sinister Squid in the ultimate crossover you never knew you wanted until right now.
Tell you what, Joseph, if we get to fund this, we'll work on it, all right?
Okay.
So Octodoc is not part of the Archetype Universe at the moment.
No. It's just one of those things we've got floating around. We've got a fair few ideas. I think the next one in the archetype setting would probably be a story following up on the Gorgon post Executioner arc, because she features as an antagonist in this story.
All right. So before we get to that,
Mm-hmm.
I have to say one thing. Get this funded, because I need a Sinister Squid story, people. Okay.
God damn it, Joe.
So the Execution Universe is more realistic, superhero-y kind of things.
Yeah, it's what I think of as super grounded. It's like if you've got Superman bounding into the air and smashing asteroids apart with a single punch, we're kind of like, yeah, the laws of physics still apply, you know? You have superpowers, but it's more like beyond Olympic level type stuff and more grounded magic-y type stuff rather than, I punch a continent in half or I fly really fast and turn back time type dealies.
So you don't have one of your superheroes standing on his head and people walking by saying, what are you doing? It's like, I'm pushing the planet out of the way of an asteroid.
Yeah,
no. You're standing on your head.
No, that would be a crazy man.
Well, many moons ago, when I was actually in community college, I made a setting for a game because I'm a tabletop role-playing gamer, and I called it Archetype City, and it was just the idea that we were going to have our own little Metropolis-alike or Gotham-like that did not cognate to a real-world city, because I had played in fictional New York, fictional LA, fictional Chicago so many times to exhaustion. I wanted to do new environments and new places. And to my mind, the Archetype Comics universe is very much just, it's Archetype City. It's that concept expanded out to encapsulate a world, and then from a world, a galaxy, and a multiverse. So yeah, the Executioner is grounded in Archetype City. It's getting right into the street level mud and blood of what Archetype is like. So this is the heavier, darker end of Archetype. There's a positive Archetype that everybody else lives in, but there it is.
All right. So give me some examples of how the laws, of how your laws of physics are going to apply to these superpowers, because I love when that happens. The Flash used to be really good at it when you have a good writer, and George R.R. Martin was really good at that with his Wild Card series. HBO, if you're listening. in that, like, for instance, he had an invisible person who could become invisible, but obviously one thing he had to do was always become naked. And then the other thing was that he had to memorize whatever room he was going to be in before he became invisible, because when he becomes invisible, his retinas are invisible, and photons pass through them rather than bounce off them, and
So he
therefore
goes
he
blind.
can't see. Yeah, he goes blind when he goes invisible. So he's walking around in the dark, so to speak, to get whatever he's got to get done invisibly.
Yeah. I think that would be a good example of the kind of thinking we're putting into things. Now, I will straight up say that in our current comic, issue number 1 that we're working on at the moment, there isn't really any example of superhero style action in the way that you might think of it today. It's much more in the vein of the Shadow, where he... And yes, it is a he. We're actually following Carl Bertram, the first executioner in 1920s Archetype City, as he is doing his job as the original executioner. And we basically see him as a kind of mastermind style hero who plans things out and then leaps into action and so on and so forth.
The comparison that I would make is, if you are a fan, if you're not a fan, you at least take heart in the fact that we use the best versions, not the terrible ones. 80s action film physics. On a certain level, there's a if it's rule of cool, but on another level, it's like, no, people still get bruises and hurt and fall off of things and get punched and break bones. So in a superhero context, it's like, yeah, the Executioner has a, some sort of super titanium fiber, amazingly resilient body armor so that he can take the bullet that would otherwise kill anyone else. But he doesn't want to take more than one. And if he took one, he's not running at full speed. He's not operating at full speed. He's not doing well because he still got shot.
Merely a flesh wound, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the same time, because we all love Monty Python, it's meaningful flesh wound. It's the like holding in my side and we're hoping nothing leaks out that I need kind of flesh wound. Because my big thing is I'm not a fan of chosen one narratives. Even though I was born in '82 and it was on my TV when I was a kid, I'm not a fan of like Dragon Ball Z, where all you have to do is just get a little bit stronger. You just have to charge your energy a little bit more because you were already going to win from the get-go. There has to be menace for the hero. The hero actually has to be at threat. So the Executioner can be as super as we need him to be. He can have as much tech or prep time as we need him to be. And then the actual set piece of a combat in comic or a scene in comic is literally stripping all of that away and showing how utterly inadequate it was, one piece at a time.
All this high tech and equipment to catch hookers. I'm completely misquoting Night Owl from Watchmen.
Oh gosh.
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
That was his lament. He had, the cave of all this technology and gadgetry, and what was he going after? Pickpockets and hookers. Overkill. So you said this first issue then is following the 1920s Executioner. The promo art is not looking like 1920s or male.
No, that is current era from the prologue comic we did, to give people a taste of the kind of art style that we're going for and the kind of work we can already do. We are going to be uploading some updates over the next few weeks of the first few pages of the current issue that we're working on. I can share some with you tonight if you like.
Sure. We love sharing the first looks at artwork. Yeah. We got to do that with Martina Markova the other night.
Let's see, is this little thing sharing properly? There we go.
It is.
Okay, so here is page 1 in its rough state. We've got our friend Riff working on this with us, so that's his rough of it. And then here is the first inking of it. We can see Carl looking much younger and entirely bald. And not entirely happy about the fact, I believe. So that's what we've got coming in at the moment for our setting in the 1920s. It's going to be a kind of... It's divergent from the actual 1920s in that World War I ended differently, and World War II doesn't really quite happen the same either. It's more like World War I ended and they went straight into the Cold War, except instead of nukes, it's superheroes.
Of course, makes sense.
Yeah. So, how much should we talk about the storyline of this issue, Joe?
All of it. Read from page 1.
We can troll through. The notion is that this story is about Carl Bertram's last job as the executioner. He was aware that he was getting old. He was aware that he was slowing down, and most importantly, he was at odds. He had personal disagreements with the direction that the government agency he was serving was going. They wanted to take superheroes and do what we did with lots of Cold War assets. He was like, I'm not here to fight spy wars against communists because they disagree with me. I'm here to protect humanity from super threats like we fought in World War I. So they're like, well, look, you have to do this last job and then you're out. The classic mafiosi line. And then while he's on that job, they send his replacement to excise him.
Yeah.
To become the executioner, you must kill the executioner.
Sort of. You wouldn't get the same title, but you get the same job.
Well, because the executioner is a illicit government agent. He's not supported by anything that's public. He's all black budget. He's basically a legal criminal at that point. And you can't have those kinds of things running around having free will. They're far too dangerous for the state.
Mm-hmm. It should also be noted that the archetype setting does lean somewhat authoritarian in its politics of its social structures and so on. So that is also reflected somewhat in the writing and will be explored somewhat as well when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, well, you almost have to be when you have beings of that caliber. Up until the point when they actually are in office as and in power that way.
Yeah, well, you see, that's exactly the kind of stuff we'd be exploring. How do you deal with superpowered individuals who can work on a scale that can only be matched by governments and so on? So there'll be some of that that can be explored as well.
There's also something to be said of the human tendency to put onto a pedestal or to make iconic that which is mundane. Not insofar as all superheroes are ravening, heroic sociopaths. We don't want to go that deeply, but the idea that if you're somebody who lucked into powers, and now your government says you're one of the good ones, you're going to help save the world, you're going to do the right thing, and you're surrounded by this cult of personality, which is just rank and file people that think you're so awesome because you look awesome. It affects you. You are affected by it. And the executioner's argument is that when you buy into your own press is when you start playing the dangerous game of whether or not the executioner is going to show up and say hi.
Okay. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that now. So basically, if Superman decides that, hey, maybe I do know what's best for people.
He turns into the Justice Lords, yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's when it's time to send the executioner in and say, no, that's not allowed to happen.
Yeah, exactly. That would be exactly the purpose of the executioner.
Which was the original remit, but at some point the government body that was designed and selected to do this policing became itself corrupted by the power it now wielded. That's how the executioner got bumped. That's how Carl ends up where he is now. I've described it before as a moral absolutist. He believes in injustice. He believes in right. He believes in wrong, to the extent that it's actually at his own detriment. Because he can't compromise where a smart person would go, well, look, it's the government. Of course they're going to do stupid things.
So he's more of a Rorschach and less of a comedian.
Yeah,
but just because the politics and superheroing is either going to be The Boys or it's going to be Watchmen.
Yeah. The only differential I would posit is that whereas Rorschach was content to be a essentially serial killer living in a hobo shed and talking about the end is nigh, the executioner still believes enough in the fundamental theoretical goodness of people to want the system to self-correct. And he's doing what he's doing in the way he's doing it to try and inspire people to make better decisions. He understands he's a criminal. He actually wants to get arrested.
Of course we're criminals, Bruce said in that scary laugh. We're all criminals. We have to be criminals.
Hey, if I have to lift, I'm going to lift from the best, and I mean that's some of the best writing that Miller and company did for that character.
So the power set of the executioner then is planning and gadgets.
Well, the way I've been personally toying with this idea, and I haven't shared it with Joe recently.
New things.
Oh, here we go.
New things. We know what the power source and the reason for all the various heroes on our planet and setting is. And broadly speaking, they form into three categories. You have your kind of planning and thinker types. You have your shock troop types. And then you have your support types, which would be like you could have a superhero type that is Superman-esque, that can punch really hard and run really fast and jump really high and, you know, super durable and whatnot. And then you've got the smart types who know where to send those super powerful, physically capable types. And then you have the support types who are capable of healing or communication over distance, limited camouflaging abilities, and, you know, that sort of thing. Kind of your Invisible Woman type character. So, broadly speaking, every hero character and every villain character falls into either entirely into one category or straddles the line between two different categories. So, to my mind, the executioner, Carl, is effectively a double into the intellect side of things. He is very much about planning. He is very much about what do they call it? That thing they did in Sherlock Holmes. It was that theater of the mind type thing where he can just visualize and plan things to insane degrees. Huh?
It's Mind Castle.
Yeah, that's the thing.
In particular, because it's pertinent because Gina doesn't have this ability. The executioner's thing that made him so devilishly effective was an enhanced sense of situational awareness, because he has the ability to perceive tangential connections between multiple things at an incredibly high level. So if you give him multiple sources of information, he can figure out how they are interconnected. Not just like where the book came from, but who printed it, how it was printed, why it was printed, who wrote to it, who contributed to it, why they contributed that, what differences it has from other editions at almost a casual glance. And it's more of a learned ability with practice than the usual sort of, this was an instinctual ability to fly that I had. this means that in a combat situation, again, the Sherlock comparison is not necessarily wrong. The Executioner could recognize it's like, this superhero is going to punch me this fast, they're going to break me in half. But if I'm standing exactly this far to the left, they'll miss, I can roll with it, and I can get around behind them and stab them in the kidney several times. And it allowed Carl to fight outside his weight class, which is basically what Gina does now.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the book and the campaign, because it's launched as of yesterday. So we have a real campaign on Indiegogo. Link is in the description, folks. Go down there and click on that, see what these guys are putting out here. This is your first campaign. So what kind of thought did you put into product? Because you've definitely thought the story out, 7 different ways from Sunday here as to what your universe is going to be. But now you actually have to put something in front of people's eyeballs. And it's more involved than just drawing 22 pages and printing them out. You've got to contact other people. You've got to contact printers, distributors. You've got to start putting in tiers and getting people wanting to get in. So let's go through what's the bait? What's going to make people come in here for more than just the book?
Well, I'll tell you what. If you can find out, we'll be very grateful.
We do have a couple of things, though.
We're not entirely hopeless, but admittedly, advertising and marketing are our hugest weaknesses. We will admit that up front every time someone asks. But, I mean, we're putting out an original work, and right now, we're saying to people, look, if you back it, we'll give you some trading cards to go with it. And as we progress along, if we get past our initial goal, we've got plans in place for stretch goals. So an expansion to 9 trading cards, some actual A4 prints of some of the main characters.
If you were a fan of if you were a fan of those 90s era, like Fleer superhero trading cards.
Oh, I had books of them.
Oh yeah, that's very much the flavor we're trying to aim for with that. I've seen not a preliminary one of our cards, but it's like, we're gonna do this style, and I was like, oh yeah, I used to own those. I know exactly what those are like.
You know what? I've seen people in crowdfunding. I'm going to say Comicsgate, but it's been beyond Comicsgate, who are doing the trading card thing. And I know that Comicsgate is trying to come up with like a standard card size and format, and basically it's all go to the same maker, so all the cards kind of look the same. What I haven't seen, and what I think would be a brilliant marketing move for people who don't have marketing and advertising, is to work with, let's say, 8 other publishers who are going to put out trading cards. And that's a very specific number for a very specific reason, because your trading card then becomes the 9th one of the set.
Yep.
And if you've collected trading cards in the past, you know what happens with 9 trading cards on a sheet. They become one big picture.
That is actually what I was planning for our initial 9. But yeah, that's certainly something we could look into, because what we have at the moment is 2 designs that we're going to use for the initial 101 comics that we're doing, and they could be retooled slightly to be slightly different enough that we could then do them as part of a set with other, creators and indie people to put out with their work.
Exactly. I mean, it's good that you could put out 9 of your own. Say, hey, look, you get the whole set if you get to this level here and you make this picture. But I think also if you have, a card that's going to go with these 8 other creators and make one big crossover kind of picture.
Oh, yeah.
Now you have people who's like, well, I'm really super into these 3 creators here, so I'm definitely going to get their stuff. But no way in hell do I want to just have 3 cards of a 9-issue set. So maybe I'll just get in just at the bare minimum tier to get the card from this other set here, which, what do you guys care? He got in, he gave you money. Right?
Exactly, yeah. No, that's certainly something to look into, and it's certainly something I'll be doing as we bumble along, is getting more names that we can work with. I mean, we're under no illusions that this is going to be an instant overnight success, but we've got everything planned out so that we know that we can take whatever happens at the end of this and then go straight into something else and build off of it regardless, you know?
Well, one thing that I would like to do, just in the theory of advertising and marketing, some time ago, after one of our first podcasts, possibly when we were here at Critical Blast last time, someone approached us and was like, I have a character for my private thing. I'd really like to see them in a comic work for your setting. And we were like, sure, we can throw together something. And we made them a thing that's theoretically art's being done of it. The script was done.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed doing that. And we met the guys over at War Campaign, and they were talking about Peregrine, right? And we had a piece of sort of tongue-in-cheek Peregrine fan art done, so we had something to show.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make that a real thing. I would love it if we could arrange at some far-flung point in the future, or sooner if people are really into it and want to back, a Gorgon versus Peregrine superhero brawl comic, like the crossovers like they used to do, where two heroes would encounter each other for exactly one book and would have a fisticuffs and then would go home without it being a 6-month-long arc.
Well, and what else you have going for you, since you are existing in a world of superheroes? I don't know whether they're wall-to-wall superheroes like Astro City, or whether they're just like, and there's like 7 of them that we know about wandering around the world somewhere. But, if you have superheroes just kind of there, blink and you miss them. The draw-in tier is something that's really popular, and people will, say, yes, draw me into the background of your comic. Make me a prison guard. Make me a dead body. I could see that people might really like saying, hey, I don't know what story I want to do for this superhero I created, but here's what he or she looks like. And just have them, fly past or run past in the background, that, yes, I had my superhero appear in Archetype Comics issue this. And that there's an appearance. What did you think of her? What does she look like? Was he strong enough? Did he look like somebody you want to follow? And I don't know.
Yeah, that is actually an idea we've floated. It's just charging for it. We just don't know what to price it at,
In matter of point, Nicholas and I had a disagreement about it, because I said that what we should totally sell is people to have the opportunity to be executed by the executioner. And he was like, no, they don't want that. I'm like, no, they do. It'll be great.
Absolutely.
If you check the share screen, you can see the art we did for Peregrine, by the way.
I'm just going to say, I write the Destroyer, art, Remo Williams, the Destroyer, who, by the way, is a Black Ops government, unlimited budget, doesn't officially exist, and goes out and kills people. It's kind of like that sort of thing. And I will frequently just, call one of my friends up and say, yeah, I just want to let you know you're dying this week.
Well, you know what? That is certainly something we can throw in there, and I would certainly love to work with people on that if they're really interested. So, yeah, we'll put that down as another to-do on our little campaign.
So what you're saying, Nicholas, is that we need the Destroyer versus the Executioner in kind of a superheroes-based enemies at the gate style. I'll shoot you, you shoot me. The first one who blinks loses.
Sure, if he wants to pay for it.
Or, just say, hey, here's my superhero character of my Dial H for Hero kind of submission.
Yeah.
You get one panel, and it's the Executioner basically saying, well, that one was easy, as holding a head up by the hair or something, and the rest of the body laying on the ground kind of sort of thing.
Sure. Whilst we're here, I'll also show you the artwork we have done for a little, what we called an O-Make comic, which is just us riffing on Marvel. This is the line work of our guy Nick, and the coloring work of our guy Riff, who's going to be doing the coloring here forward. So I'll give you a second or two to read that, and then I'll swap pages when you're ready.
All right. I'm as good as I can see right now. Okay. I'm good, but let's give Hatch and the others here. We got Hatch 450SX in the background here, and he has been involved on your IGG page. So
He has actually backed us already, I think. And yes, hello, Hatch. I did see your comment that you left. I did reply to the initial one. I haven't replied to the new one yet. So we will get to that as soon as we can, I promise. But thank you for showing up.
I absolutely love this Xena Warrior Princess who's been soaking in the Jello, the lime Jello pits for a while.
Yes,
that's exactly who that is.
Exactly. We will not say who that is or who that could be. And
that's Gamera's second cousin who works at the gym.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a bit of a tongue-in-cheek that certain characters were emigrating to Archetype Comics because they're no longer needed where they were before, because they've been replaced for reasons.
Yeah, of course, yes. You won't see it's not like you stole a character from another publisher, because that character is not being published anymore as far as I can tell.
Exactly. They don't exist anymore. They haven't since the early 90s.
You know what, though? I do love that kind of thing. This one's a little bit more blatant than the tongue-in-cheek I've seen before, but since she doesn't really have, a symbol, you can get away with just saying, green woman. No, it's definitely not the person you're saying it is. But, John Byrne used to do that. And the example that comes to mind right now is he did one of his Man of Steel comics when it was Mr. Mixyzptlk.
Oh God!
Fighting with Superman, and fighting as much as a little imp from the fifth dimension do. And of course, Byrne being burnt. It may not even been burnt, but I'm going to say burn anyway. Somebody can correct me later. When Mixie leaves the universe, he goes to another one, and he's actually the Impossible Man, and you can tell that the legs of the team surrounding him are the Fantastic Four, and he's been popped right into being defeated by another team. I thought that kind of thing was a nice, sly little nod. Byrne was doing a lot of that when he was leading Fantastic Four for Man of Steel. There was the infamous cover of She-Hulk holding the car overhead, reproducing Action Comics #1.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that particular run of She-Hulk. The original run with him doing it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And I miss that sort of stuff.
And
I miss comics.
I remember many moons ago thumbing through a comic that had fallen into my clutches somewhere from the 70s, from the Howard the Duck at Marvel era, late 70s, early 80s, which was basically like Marvel Comics on the Tonight Show. It was many pages of just weird in-jokes and discontinuity behavior. Everybody was drinking martinis and acting very silly. I both love and hate that kind of thing, and both miss it, and I'm so glad we don't do it anymore. So, conflicted.
Remember Assistant Editors Month?
Maybe.
Marvel used to do a thing called Assistant Editors Month. And it was basically, there's whatever continuity was going on in all the books out the window this month, because guess what? The editors were on a cruise or at conventions or whatever, and the assistant editor was taking over. So it was like anything can happen day on the Mickey Mouse Club. And they actually put the banner on the front of all the books says, "It's Assistant Editors Month. We're not responsible for the craziness that goes on."
Yes.
And it would just be something totally off the wall. But the Howard the Duck stuff, I loved that as a kid. I loved the magazine format more because there were the books that I kept in my long white boxes, and then there were the books I slid between my mattress and box spring, and the Howard the Duck magazine formats were the latter, because Marvel had balls back then, and so did Howard.
My thing is, when I was a kid, I liked kid stuff, and kid stuff is great. But now that I'm an adult, I seem to have aged into a time frame where nostalgia is king. We're pushing for nostalgia hard because we threw things to the wayside really early. Maybe we should not have. And while I appreciate anything that is both nostalgic and qualitative, I really get salty about things that are both nostalgic and pandering, where they take it's like literal Mad Libs. They took a big hat full of terms and they pull them out and they make a story out of it. And it's like, okay, so what's this story about? Spider-Man, Nazis, jetpacks, dinosaurs, aliens. It's like, that doesn't necessarily make it good. That's a bunch of basic ideas of something that could be good.
Well, that's the challenge, though, isn't it?
I mean, one would hope.
Yeah, to make that good. I've brought up on several past live streams here that, you know, being in quarantine with no new comics, I've been going through the that.
Oh God.
And just, you know, pulling old stuff out. And one of the things I pulled out was like, you know, an old 1970s Superman issue. Well, you start the thing off and Superman is waking up out of bed. And he's a foot taller than he was before and his clothes don't fit. And he's, you know, he can't go to work, obviously. And he calls the Atom. He's like, you're familiar with growing, shrinking. And it's Lex Luthor who's got this, you know, brilliant plan to zap Superman with something that makes his body grow, but his brain stay the same size. And pretty soon he'll be, you know, so dumb because he'll have a peanut-sized brain and a dinosaur-sized body. And they go through all this atom physics science thingy and build this oversized room that makes Superman look normal size so he can broadcast from remote and do his job. All in one single fucking issue. And I didn't have to know what happened in the last 10. I didn't have to know what was going to happen in the next issue. It was this very complex, tons of shit happened in it. Story, and that's what I missed. Not necessarily saying it was a good story, although I was entertained enough, but the fact that it was
self-contained.
Well, that's the thing, is that during the Onslaught era, I guess we could call it, the late to mid 90s, what apparently was the comics would crash and I never noticed. The reason I wasn't reading Marvel was I just wasn't impressed with the stories. Not that I had like fallen out of love with Marvel or didn't like Marvel or wasn't a Marveloid. Sure, I read DC, but still, I'm a Marvel kid. My thing is, I was reading Dark Horse because I'm a Predator fan. I love me some, you know, bad, gory 80s movies. And they also had the short run comics, but it's like, I can do a 1 to 5 issue collected. I can do that. I don't have a problem with having long run or long form continuity, but I do have a problem with long form continuity in 6-month bursts that we're going to undo at the end of 12 months anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you know, these older comics, they had continuity to them. If you pick up any old comic, you'll run into invariably the panel where the hero's like, oh, that's exactly like when I did this. And, you know, editor's note, see Superman issue number 162. And you know, it was consistent with itself. And, you know, the tons of background players all had their own story going on. And sometimes you had this long-running subplot where, you know, somebody has a secret and you'll never find out what that secret is till like a year. But it's not the main plot. The main plot is this issue I did this and it's over with.
Yeah.
This issue I did this and it's over with. And somewhere in between all of that is like, you know, Lois saying, you know, I'm going to put this in my special drawer. What's in her special drawer? Stay tuned.
Well, I've mentioned before a comic that I actually think is sort of the synthesis, the essence of our de facto motto, simple stories well told. It's a Spider-Man Black Widow crossover comic from the 80s, which guest stars Daredevil at a certain point. A young inner city youth is accused of a crime he didn't commit, and Matt Murdock knows it. But Matt Murdock is being Matt Murdock. He can't go get this this solved because he's got a midnight arraignment, right? So he's got to send Spider-Man and Black Widow to take care of it, who decide to look into it independently of Murdoch directly, because Peter Parker found out about it because he was getting photos. Imagine that. But the actual A side of the story, the core of the story, is they were building off of the recent Son of Sam blackout. During the Summer of Sam, they had the big blackout in New York. So what is it? It's Black Widow and Spider-Man chasing down some bad guys during the blackout. And the name of the story is Where Were You When the Lights Went Out? The idea that a blackout transforms New York City, the well-known super city, into an entirely different environment, and suddenly heroes who usually have things nicely tied up now are stretched thin because nobody can control the city when the city doesn't want to be controlled, was like profoundly interesting to me. And I find it kind of sad that they can't do that in a single story anymore. Because if they did the blackout, it would have to be, well, we have a comic for the blackout, and then the after effects, and the wider effects, and then it's got to have a political or a very special message about what the blackout means to a wider people. And it's like, can it just be a blackout? Can it just be a crime story?
and let me ask you this. Do you remember how long it took you to read that one comic book?
Well, I'm the kind of weirdo that I certainly consumed it right away the first time, and then I would reread it. So I read it the second time a little slower, So right. I would say it probably only took me 5-10 minutes to read it originally, but I have subsequently read it enough times to have it up here. It's in my brain. I've probably spent like an hour on it at least, just that book.
Okay, because it usually takes me like 15 to 20 minutes to read one of the older 70s comic books. And I'm not a slow reader by any means, but today's books is like, 5 minutes and I'm out the door wondering, what did I just read here? What just happened? And I did a study on this. So highfalutin language. I did a study. Obviously, you've seen I've got some books. So what I did was I decided to take a 12-issue run from every decade. And I chose Justice League because that's what I had the most of. And I sat down, and I said, okay, here's a run from the 60s. Here's a run from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and then what was current at the time was the 2010s. And before I did that, I went in and got some of my Golden Age books out and just set them aside as one-offs. And like a total madman, I went through each and every book and wrote down on Excel spreadsheet, Justice League number, whatever it was, this month and year, this cover price. And I counted the number of stories that were in that book. So if there was a story and a backup, that book had 2 stories. If it was a 2-parter, then that book had a half of a story. Mm-hmm. And then I counted the number of pages. And then I counted the number of panels. And then I counted the number of words. This was a project. And what I was finding out was that, adjusted for inflation, we're not just getting, more expensive comics for the same thing. We're getting less story or fewer stories. And the stories we are getting, we're getting less of a story. So, we might get, a story now, a 12-issue run might give us 3 stories of 4 issues each, or even 1 story. And still out of that 1 story, we get fewer panels and fewer words than 12 issues with, 7 stories the decade before. And it all seemed to spike right there at the 90s. It was a plateau, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and then all of a sudden it's just up or down, depending on which way what kind of graph I was mapping out. It's all on criticalblast.com with links to the spreadsheets and all the work that I did on it. It's like the high cost of reading comics. And it was received with the whole, oh my God, RJ just discovered that comic books went up in cost. But it was really more than that, because I was like, no, I've adjusted for inflation. I know that the paper costs went up. I know that the printing costs went up. Look at what you're getting for the same dollar.
Yeah, the
You
content.
got better paper, but you're ingesting a whole lot less.
Well, I have opined before that the reason I don't read Avengers isn't just because for many, many moons, I'm sorry, anyone who wants to say otherwise is misremembering. The Avengers was the B team. Marvel was always about single character comics. The Avengers was kind of like a thing that happened for guest stars who showed up in other people's books. But now they're front row. Anybody who gets on the Avengers, that's the main thing. That's the main thrust. And any book that gets brought to, we're going to have ad space, you're going to be the next thing that we're going to promote. They change up the author, they change up the artist, they change up the style. They make it everything that isn't what made that character popular when that character was in a secondary book. So if I read Moon Knight or Morbius, two characters I really like, I'm actively going out to read lesser tier comics because they tend to have more focused storytelling and more focused artistic or creative direction. They know what they want, and they're not under the gun to live up to a major release schedule or concept. Recently, they did another Morbius, and I had loved the previous run, so I'm like, okay, I'll check this out. Cool. It was all really overproduced. And when I say overproduced, I mean it had an artist. The artist obviously had talent, but everything was really shiny. Like it was almost image levels of intensely wrought visual, to the extent that, except for, that blob is Morbius and that blob is Spider-Man, I almost couldn't tell who people were when they were mid-action. And the story itself, while simple, was very, very bland. Morbius has screwed up in attempting to cure himself again. A person from Morbius's past is here to kill him because he's a bad again. Spider-Man must show up to save the day, to put this all right again. Leaving Morbius at the end, yet again, reaffirmed and more dedicated to doing the right thing because he's Morbius, and it won't stick until the next story.
Well, and that's Morbius is the living vampire, which puts him leaps and bounds ahead of all the dead ones, I guess. I always chuckled at that subtitle. It's like the living vampire. Really? Okay.
Well, it's circumventing the comics code.
Exactly. Hatch is asking a question here on the Mask of the Executioner.
Is it based on the Udon Taskmaster? No, it's more a case that we're drawing on similar themes and ending up in the same place.
If we had an actual inspiration for the visual, and it's surprisingly enough independent, we didn't tell the artist to go this way, I would say Mask of the Phantasm.
And, yeah. I mean, it's all the same kind of Grim Reaper theming style. I know for Carl Bertram, the original Executioner, we basically sent a picture of the Shadow to our guy and was like, okay, start from here, have fun, and he came up with his own style for that. As for the Executioner, I mean, we sent him some general kind of design work and said, look, these are some of the notes, this is what they're like. What do you think? And he just came back with a ref sheet. If you want, I'll screen share and show you the two ref sheets I have here.
I mean, if I look at your avatar, actually, the very tiny avatar, there's also overtones of like Scorpion and Sub-Zero for your NetherRealm friends who like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. No, don't worry. I don't think you're accusing us of anything, Hatch. It's just you're curious. So, oh god, it's sharing the wrong screen.
It goes forever.
Why is it sharing the wrong screen?
Do not hide by Zero.
Why did it do that? Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so here's what I will do. This is the depreciated folder. Now, this is the original design we came up with for the Executioner, which was much more technical, and it's kind of actually based on a character design from Heroes of the Storm, which was the evil costume for Tracer in that game. So we used some elements of that, and then he remixed it a couple times. So we had the skull logo on the chest, and at one point she was a wrestler. We were kind of like, okay, this is a little odd. We might use that for something else.
To be fair, I kind of like the techno gas mask look. It's very Plague Doctor-y.
It is kind of cool, but we wanted to go with something a little easier to draw overall. It might show up again, though. That's the final helmet design that we came up with, but again, these were all discarded designs. But then we went back to this is our final design. So we kept some of the elements of the Tracer-style mask, but it's really just a hood with a kind of devil mask on the... Or not a devil mask, a skull mask on the front, which, I mean, it is kind of... Well, no, it is kind of generic, but it's supposed to be like that, you know? Yeah, we might use it for another character eventually, you know? And I mean, this is an even older design of Gina because she's not a pale-skinned redhead in this iteration, so we kept the costume.
She has organs, apparently.
Yes, she has many organs. and if you ask her about them, she'll be happy to show your organs to you.
She's huge. She must have lots of organs.
She has organs, and they are not 90% mammary glands. If there's anything wrong with that. But no one's going to be sitting there picking apart that particular aspect of the hero this time around.
Yeah.
So what is the campaign's deadline here? We got a 30-day or a 60-day?
It's 30 days. 30 days.
30 days, 2%, 98% to go, 98 divided by 28. Okay, we got work to do, guys.
Yep.
We get you on some more panels here. Hopefully you're hitting everybody up.
We are annoying the hell out of people, but there's probably more community out there that we should reach out to, but I don't know who they are yet. But I'm determined to find out. Our friend Hatch here, who was kind enough to drop a few names that we're going to check out as well later on tonight.
All right. I would say, go big or go home, but, the big guys now are all sitting there saying, we're not going to do anybody on our show now unless they've already fulfilled one before.
Yeah.
Which I can get because, it speaks to credibility. If you, there have been too many now that, not a bunch, but, few is too many if they get high profile and they don't fulfill.
I have shown up for podcasts I was not invited to.
Yeah, that one you did with that comic name beginning with A, who I always forget.
I'm sure you'll figure it out. But
anybody
over at
put an open call out there, hit the link and show up.
Well, over at Chapel of Comics, they had their weekly, and they're like, "Hey, we don't have really a plan. Is anybody about?" And I'm like, I could come sit in. They're like, "Okay, come sit in. We're going to talk about the new Warriors." And it's like, oh, good. Let's have that conversation.
Woo! They're this is what I see happening. The new Warriors are so bad that Marvel announced they were coming, and we shut the fucking country down for 3 months.
You know what the terrible part is? There is one character there. It's oddly enough the Morbius derived character that with a rework that could actually work as a character. The idea that Morbius gave somebody a blood transfusion and they ended up being Morbius Light actually works. It's the rest of the team.
Exactly.
It's the rest of the team that is a bad idea because internet gas never happened, and I don't like green Cyclops.
Yeah, internet gas is just horrifying. and then you've got the suspiciously not incest family.
And Dora the Explorer got big.
Yeah, Chunky the Explorer.
Completely backpack.
Oh god.
I still stand by the argument. What they actually did is they just ripped off Fat Chance from the Venture Brothers.
Oh god.
Instead of reaching into her duodenum, she reaches into her backpack and can pull out anything, but has no control over what it might be.
Oh, well, you guys are probably too young to remember the Super Globetrotters.
No, I do, because they used to rerun that on Cartoon Network back in the day. I have seen.
Okay, well, remember the one who had the gigantic fro and he could reach into there and just pull out anything that was needed?
Yes. But I wouldn't advise that we mention that too loudly. That could be the next Marvel character, because clearly.
Well, have you seen what they've done with Riri? She's now got a huge afro.
Right, because she's clearly not enough like Misty Knight already.
When I saw the picture, I thought it was Misty Knight. And then I made a snide comment. Like, how the hell is she going to get that hair into the Iron Man outfit? And I think the point stands. I mean,
yeah,
gigantic hair, and from what I understand of afro maintenance, that thing's a lot of work to keep fluffed up and puffy and whatnot.
They needed to give Ironheart a difference, so she's going to become a new hero. She's going to become the Iron Fro. It's going to be an Iron Man suit with a giant afro of metal. It'll be amazing.
I will forgive every. Yeah, if they make the helmet to fit it. That would be great.
You know what? I am going to make a note here for our artist to draw this tomorrow. I am getting out my pen and making a note.
I will forgive everything if they shove her into that Ironheart suit and have her fight whatever it is she's got to fight, and then take off that helmet and have helmet head. Just looking in the mirror and going, "This is going to take forever."
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it was us writing it, we'd have her in the giant metal afro, right? And we'd have her headbutt somebody with it to make it justified. Because that's obviously what you do if you have a giant metal dome.
Of course. Oh, man. How do we get here?
I don't know, but it seems like a good place.
It's a fun place. Comics is fun to make fun of right now.
I believe it's the pandemic madness.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I mean, we've been, I don't know if you guys have seen the channel or not, but we've been meeting every 2 weeks with retailers around the country. So we just did it again last Wednesday. We meet with Yul Carter out of Berkeley, California, Michael Tierney from Little Rock, Arkansas, and Dave Dyer from Belleville, Illinois, and basically sit down and have a bitch session about, what their states are doing to them and how they're selling or not selling comics. And it's interesting because, Michael is in Arkansas that didn't close down, so he can keep his store open, but he couldn't get new comics because of Diamond. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of frontline in the trenches knowledge coming from these guys about what it's like to run a store under normal conditions and having to deal with Diamond and having to deal with publishers. And, COVID aside, what's been revealed is that the entire funneling system to one place may be convenient, but it's your single point of failure. And when it's gone, you're screwed. And even before it's gone, you have no negotiating power because they are the only place you can get something from.
I am not a legal expert, so you can take my opinion with a grain of salt. But I have always had a problem with the idea that we have antitrust laws here in America, yet we seem conspicuously accepting of convenient practical monopolies as long as they don't draw attention to themselves. I don't understand why it is that Diamond is allowed to be the only distributor and why there are not several or qualitative competitors, at least on a regional scale, so that the business keeps moving.
Because when they went to court over that very thing, it was proven that there were other distributors. They just don't have the economy of scale to operate at the level that Diamond does, but they do exist. So they weren't any of the ones that stepped in to try to become the new distributors.
The thing is, in the broader, because I don't want to start a huge political conversation, is that this entire notion, going back at least to 2008, if not older, of too big to fail, should be making people very concerned. Because if you have a linchpin to your economy, that if this thing goes, the whole thing goes, you have a problem. This economy theoretically is supposed to be flexible enough by being reactive enough that if one linchpin goes down, the whole thing doesn't go down. Having multiple competitors is good for the economy. Having one locked down ultra provider is bad, and this is the evidence.
Well, I think we reflexively came back and filled that in because, Diamond was at the point where they were saying no new comics until August. And Michael Tierney is the one who pointed out, said, boy, when DC found 2 different distributors to divide the company in half, Diamond was like, oh, we can get you comic books by the end of May. So I don't think these other 2 distributors are going to go anywhere. I think it's going to be, you're going to have Diamond, and then you're going to have, East Country and West Country distributors still operating as competitors. And I think DC is the one who woke up. If anything good came out of all of this, DC smelled the coffee and said, oh, crap, we could be put out of business by our distributor.
Well, what I find very funny is that I only became aware of this not recently, but I was able to recognize it for what it was due to a friend of mine. He's into wrestling. I'm not into wrestling. But my mom and I, oddly enough, have an affection for lucha because my mom, when she was a kid, used to watch lucha on Mexican TV on Saturday mornings. I found a show, it's a little older now, called Lucha Underground, which was Robert Rodriguez in Mexico trying to give the WWE, WWF treatment to luchadors in LA. And it's pretty great. The thing is that the McMahon empire, that financial empire, is built on buying small promoters and edging them out. And yes, it does have the advantage of bringing a great deal of production quality and maybe respectability to that industry, such as it is. But everybody's got to go through McMahon. Everybody's got to go through that family. Everybody's got to support that dynasty. And if you are in the outs with them socially, if you earn the ire of Vince McMahon, you're done. That's not how this is supposed to work. It's kind of the same thing with Diamond.
It is. I was there actually in front of the screen, not there, but when I could flip back and forth between WCW and WWF, and the moment when they flipped the switch and they were both the same show. I knew it was downhill from there. Then I found ECW shortly after that, and I was like, what the hell am I watching here? This is pretty damn cool. And within a year, they were all showing up on WWE again. So,
well, Lucha Underground, I believe, is more or less dead due to the El Rey Network getting in a slap fight with Hollywood for more money. But they produced some really good linking comics, also called Lucha Underground. You can find them around. Between the seasons of the show, so there's like 3, maybe 4 Lucha Underground comics, and it's like I never knew that I wanted to read supernatural luchador comics before now. A friend of ours, Nicholas and I, named Tioni, in fact, showed us a bunch of 1950s and 1960s luchador art, like full color, full painted pulp style covers, because apparently in Mexico, lucha fiction and lucha comics are big business.
And the movies. They would star in movies in the 50s.
One of the first things I asked Ethan as soon as I found out about this is, can we get published in Mexico? Should we be going south of the border? I will do lucha comics for money. I'll get 1,000 pesos. I don't care.
Hey, I will sell to whoever wants to buy. I am happy with that.
How are you guys doing distributing?
How do you mean?
I mean, are they all going to show up in your house, Nicholas, and then you're going to shove them in envelopes and stamp them? Or are you going to have them printed somewhere and then put to some distributor who's going to say, okay, let's put them in Gemini mailers and take care of all this for you?
What's happening is we are contacting a group called Mixam, who are working with a bunch of other European comic guys at the moment. They will be printing it out for us, shipping us a big box, and then I will be buying a bunch of our version of book mailers and just stuffing them all into book mailers to mail out to people. I've been in contact with my local post office and have negotiated a rate for worldwide shipping, and that is now fixed. So we're basically all good to go on that sort of front.
Okay. I've proposed this to a number of people. I might have even talked to you guys about it the last time we were together here. But I know that international shipping is usually the big hit for
Horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my idea was that, why don't you, not you, but y'all, find multiple printers of equal quality, and then have, your foreign comics printed wherever it would be best to ship them from to your overseas people, and your domestic ones printed locally, and then have your covers all printed domestically, locally, so that you can get them, sign them all if you're doing a signing kind of thing, and then package up, okay, we've sold 1,000 of them in the UK. Here's 1,200 covers shipped to your printer. Bind these there and then mail them out. Now you've got one international shipment coming out of your pocket, which is to your printer, and then they can take care of putting it all together and dispersing it, and kind of cut your mailing costs down. I have not crunched numbers on that. I don't have to. I'm not publishing at that kind of a level. But on paper, it sounds like that would be.
No. I've run the numbers privately, and I've spoken with another creator over in the States about the kind of prices we're getting over here, and he was pretty shocked at how much money he could potentially save if we were in a position to work together. Like if he had enough European customers, I mean, to give you an idea, I know that a lot of people in the US are charging $12 to $15 to mail within the United States, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I can mail to the... we are mailing to the United States with tracking, full packaging for $20 flat. So, it's actually cheaper for us to mail stuff to the US than it is for people in the US to mail each other, in some cases.
In matter of point, I have been advocating to Nicholas that we need to have some kind of numbering for the comics that are going to come out of this Indiegogo, because then if we decide to do a signing goal or some other thing, the owners, the people that fund, can say, I don't just have a copy of the book or a signed copy of the book, but I have the limited first run. Here's the number on the back that says this is an original, so that even if we never become super famous and the comic itself never becomes worth a huge amount of money in the theoretical collector's market that no longer exists after the 90s bubble burst, it's still one of a kind, at least to the person that owns it.
That's an interesting way to do it. So it's sort of like a serial number of some kind.
Yeah. Hatch, just based on what you're saying here, I'm just going to go back here. As far as I know, I set the shipping to be just 20. So I don't know what's going on there. It might be that it charged you $22 because it did a currency conversion at some point. Because all our stuff is listed in euros, not USD. So I am not sure what that is.
That's very likely. Yeah, the euro and the dollar are almost one-to-one.
Yeah, it charged you €15 for shipping. That is actually what we're charging for shipping. I got the number wrong by $5. So it's less for shipping.
Yeah,
you're the guy that's supposed to be good at the numbers, because I am not good at the numbers. What are you doing?
It's 2 a.m. Get stuffed.
So basically what I'm hearing is that American comic book creators would be better off printing in the UK and mailing them back home than they would be printing them here and mailing them to the UK.
Pretty much. We're in a funny position in Ireland, you see. We get a lot of international flights that stop here after having been to Europe, and they're going back to the US with empty cargo holds. So our costs for mailing out from Ireland are actually really, really cheap. Way cheaper than it would be in the US domestically.
I mean, Hatch appears to disagree, but
Well, I mean, Hatch, I can tell you that the cost for shipping without packaging, without the cost of someone putting it all into the box and stuff, works out to about $5 in mailing fees. Well, yeah, that's... I don't know why some people are charging so much in the US for what they're doing.
I think Saving Solo shipped out for like 35 cents.
Well, that's good. But they probably shipped it in an envelope, didn't they?
I think they just stuck a stamp on the back of the comic and wrote your name.
okay.
I don't think that's what they intended to do, from what I remember, but that's what their publisher did.
Yeah, that was a big.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Nicholas, I have a genius idea. We can cut costs amazingly. What we'll do is we'll airdrop it on a street corner in the bad part of town, and whoever wants it can just pick it up there. But they gotta run, and they gotta go get it themselves.
Hatch, it very well might be. It very well might be.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case here, because if you know that you're going to be shipping, 80% of your product at $5 a box because it's going to be domestic, and you don't know what the hell you're going to be doing on your international, because some of them are going to go to the UK, some of them are going to go to Australia. You're going to average that out and say, okay, well, I know it's going to be $5 in the US. I'm going to charge $7.50 to $8 for the US, so that some of that carries over into this. Oh my God, I did not expect to pay $40 shipping to some other place.
Okay, so Nicholas,
that's just good business.
We now have to do two things because Hatch is a genius. One, we have to get drones. We have to get skull drones for the executioner, and then we got to get bought by Amazon.
Oh God!
There you go.
Because clearly the idea is that you deliver your Archetypes comics with an executioner drone. Little skull-faced drone comes up to your door, pushes the button, you open the door, it puts the comic down, and flies away.
and if you can get to $1 million, we'll just laser paint the entire comic on the surface of the full moon, so you can just come outside and just read it as we scroll it past it.
Well, I mean that'll work for at least 13 pages.
Yeah.
Because every phase will have a slightly different page. They only won't be able to read. You have to use night sight 4 because the new moon is all dark.
This will it could actually show up better because your laser will be reflecting back from the Earth. So you have like nice dark background.
Lunatics,
Yep.
lunatics, all of you. Okay.
All right. I think, God, I'm like punch drunk, and I have had nothing to drink but Dr. Pepper. So,
Oh God.
Can you imagine if I was on a stream with Cecil drinking what he drinks and the ideas I might come up with here? We might be taking over small countries by now.
Well,
Anyhow,
we've already been on drunk streams, so...
Oh God! Don't remind me.
Yeah, but we're going to go back to those guys at some point. Hopefully they will
Oh
not...
God! Don't remind me.
make sure to have a designated host who knows how to kick people off the stream and doesn't get so drunk he can't figure out what.
Well, no, the host was fine. It was a commentating guest that was like, oh my.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't get rid of them. It's like, oh boy.
Well, that happens. Peter Samedi made the mistake of having an open mic night one time, and he just put the link out in Twitter, and assuming that people would be human beings when they came on the show, and they were not.
Yes. How many Nazis did he get?
I don't know. I just remember the moons that you'd click over and somebody'd be dropping their drawers. He's like, oh, now I've got to dump the whole stream, or YouTube's just going to hit me with a strike.
Yeah.
I have
right.
I have been on Mr. Samadi's open mic night. He was a wonderful host. I very much appreciate what he's doing. I'm also told that I seemed to have weirded him out because he was either he was not expecting or he was hoping for someone to be a little more, casual, not quite so formal and prepared. But I mean, he's Peter Samadi. He's the alternate comics guy. I did not feel like I could quite be like when you've only got 5 minutes on his open mic.
Yeah.
That's the guy. Alternate Comics. That's who it was, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about Peter in the next upcoming days here. So we're not quite sure how that's going to shake out yet, whether it's going to be for the good or for the bad. I'm pulling for him. I've got my own gut feeling on the thing, but I'm going to hold back and see what Peter has to say. He's been invited to come on our stream. As we go out, folks, please hit that description link below there. Get over to Indiegogo and back the Executioner. You got some really good artwork up there. We got a very interesting story coming out of this that could build into something larger. If you like this kind of content, definitely hit that subscribe button. We're approaching 1,000, which would be a nice little place to sit for a while. If you want to help the site out other ways, just visit the site. It does cost you nothing to click on criticalblast.com. Check out our reviews and interviews. The ads will carry you through, and we'll make a little bit of change. But if you absolutely have to have a product in your hand, might I suggest you go to Amazon and pick up Bulletproof Origins by Stephen J. Mitchell. This is our first hardcover young adult superhero novel that Stephen has written. It's the first of 3. The second one will tentatively be out later at the end of this year. Bulletproof follows young Cody Haywood, who wakes up on his 16th birthday to find out that he is now impervious to all harm and decides that he's going to become a superhero. Unfortunately for Cody, he's got the attention span of a ferret on pixie sticks and requires the help of his friends to keep him focused if he's going to survive his new career, because there's a bunch of terrorists who would like to find out how to be bulletproof too, and they're not above nefarious means of taking him out. Guys, it's been a pleasure as always talking with you about Archetype Comics ostensibly, but and then everything else that just sort of creeps into the stream. Thank you for putting up with me as I continue to meander a bit myself.
Yeah, it's been pleasant to get back into doing this again.
I've got to work on my cantankerousness and such, because when I watched you guys on another stream, some lady was just taking you to task.
Yeah.
I was in full cringe mode. I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna be a fight online here. But it was fun nonetheless, and I think it all worked out in the end too. So
yeah,
let's get you on some other streams and get this thing up to the $10,000 US mark that it's aiming for.
Yep. Well, we're going to be hopping into as many more streams as we can find. I'm going to be hitting Twitter again tonight to remind people we exist, and we'll see where we're going next.
Yeah, and
around, call it a bitch.
And with that in mind, Nicholas, there was a question from Hatch some time ago. That's right, we pay attention. Is there a plan for an extension? Like, if we make it to, say, 75% and just don't quite have the time, would there perchance be a, don't worry, there's more time?
It's certainly doable. If we're on a good trajectory and it's like we're just a few K short, then certainly we could always extend it a little bit. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if we don't succeed this time, it's definitely not something we're going to abandon. So we'll be coming back to it anyway. So whatever happens,
cool stretch goals out there, and give people the impetus they need to throw that extra money out at you.
Yeah, and I mean, we've only got 5 people backing us at the moment, but that says that there's at least 5 people out there who really have an interest in our work, and I don't want to let those 5 people down.
And we did have the signatures on the mailing list, so we know that there's an interest that just isn't a funding interest yet. We hope they fund.
All right. Guys, we're going to leave it at that, and we'll talk with you again maybe in a month as we get closer to goal on this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure.
See you then. Bye.
Oh.